Chapter 10. New Year's Eve was extremely strange to me. Not only from December 26th to December 31st had no one mentioned a thing about me losing my job and apartment, but I was invited to a party with them at their little community center. This was going to be incredibly different from the elaborate New Year's Eve parties in which I was used to. I remember my first New York New Year's. I was invited to watch the ball drop at work. I was stuck in my cubicle for most of the day, trying desperately to complete an edit before the countdown had begun. I was that dedicated to rising to the top. I had to show that I could actually work hard for what I wanted to achieve. Being a lowly entry-level copy editor in your mid-20s was just a stepping stone to bigger things, such as editor. The editor who I would come to replace had already went home for the day. Typical woman. Families and work did not mix, in my most humble opinion. You had to choose, one or the other. If you chose both, you would neglect one. Since you can get arrested for child neglect, choose your job, always, or lose it. The choice is yours, but the choice will plague you for life. You are either a mother or a worker. Both at the same time was an impossibility, and what man would support you all your life so you could devote wasted time in raising children? No. I was extremely frustrated when Martin approached my desk. The admin actually made more money at the time than I did, given he had been there 3 years longer. Even though we were the same age, he started working earlier than I. He had plans to be a published author. Being an admin in such a busy publishing firm was eye-opening for him. He learned all the secrets and lingo of the publishing world. By the time I had left, he had been writing his novel for 10 years. Just publish already. "Hello, Kathryn." His quiet voice assaulted my ears as I was deep in concentration. I gave out a little sigh before looking up at him. At this point in my career, I was still nice. Well, nice enough. I had to earn the respect of people before I tore them down. "Hello, Martin." Fake smile on cue. "You should take a break. I want to show you something." He placed his hands on his hips, bunching up the red sweater that hung nicely there. Martin was, in fact, a handsome man, soft dark curls exploding wildly from his face, piercing blue eyes that sometimes hid behind glasses, small frame, but well built. He looked like he should be a stand-in for a superhero in a blockbuster, action-packed, swoon-worthy fest of muscle and steel. He was that dreamy. Well, I bit my lip, pondering the thought as I looked at that handsome specimen. "I promise it is not scary or embarrassing." He leaned down, tugging my arm gently. God, he smelled like an Abercrombie & Fitch ad. I was immediately hypnotized. In my 20s, I was known to give in to my weaknesses a little. Okay, maybe a lot. All right. I smiled and hit save on my desktop as a delicious feeling swept over me. He led me to the stairwell and told me to trust him. "Now, close your eyes and I will lead you." I shut my eyes and allowed him to slowly drag me flight after flight upward. It was exciting and somewhat scary to allow someone else to lead me. I was the one who was always in control at all times. This was probably the most romantic thing that had ever been done to me. Seriously, the art museum had nothing on this. We finally stopped at the top of a stairwell. With my eyes still closed, I heard him open a door and a blast of cold air immediately hit my face. I was shivering as he told me to open my eyes. We were on the roof. We were alone. There was a blanket spread out with 2 more neatly folded up blankets close by. A bottle of red wine was set out with 2 glasses. It was all strategically placed and looked spectacular. This was before I expected grand gestures and expensive tastes to win me over. Did this mean he actually liked me or that he just wanted to get laid? The lines were always blurred when it came to the single world in the city. Whatever this was, I liked it. I was up for either/or at that moment in time. The wine will warm you up. He pulled away from me long enough to pour 2 glasses of wine and directed me to sit next to him on the spread out blanket. I sat down and accepted the glass shyly. I took small sips. It wasn't expensive wine, but it was just as good. I let the liquid travel down my throat, warming as it went. Thank you. I looked over at him and smiled. Let it be noted that before I became an editor, I was sweet and charming. In this instance with Martin so many years ago, I was reacting honestly. He awakened feelings in me that I never knew I had, which is sad to say after that evening I suppressed said feelings from ever surfacing again. I have been in love with you since you first came in for your interview, Kathryn, he stated, taking massive gulps of wine in between the confession to gain more confidence, no doubt. You are smart, beautiful, and so sweet. Everything I want in a woman. Where was this coming from? I never knew he had feelings for me. He never gave me any indication, at all. Did you say love? That L word was the surprising one that stood out. I had never heard that word spoken to me from my own family at that point. It was like a word from a separate language altogether. Yes, beautiful Kathryn. He leaned in and seized my lips with his. Not sure if it was the wine or the fact that his kiss drove me to delirium, but my head became so heavy and warm. Maybe it was both. I must have started to sway because he took the now empty wine glass out of my hand and pushed me backward gently to lay me down. He swiftly grabbed a folded blanket and placed it under my head before I touched the hard ground. He hovered above me for a while, propped on his side, gently caressing my cheeks, my lips with his thumb. I love you, Kathryn Wilde, he finally said again as he captured my mouth for another kiss. I am glad he did not wait for my own response or a return of the sentiment. I had no idea what love was, nor was I about to define it in a moment of passion. All I knew was that this was an incredible and yet overwhelming feeling. It wasn't unbearable, but it was a wave of happy warmth. I could be in this moment for now. I could deal with its aftermath tomorrow when I woke up alone in my own apartment, or at least I thought. The ball dropped, confetti flew everywhere, the crowd roared loudly, but I missed the entire thing. Being on a rooftop in New York City, it would seem that such a display would be hard to miss. But alas, I was in the most amazing embrace with a man I barely knew, but felt this intense connection with. We could not seem to part with each other, but we decided that we needed to go battle the streets to get someplace warm. The wine in my bloodstream suggested my apartment, since it was so close. Martin's eyes lit up. He had brought everything up in a picnic basket to make it easier to carry. He folded all the blankets neatly and placed them gingerly in the basket before placing the bottle of wine and glasses strategically so they would not break. I watched him and admired his neatness, his attention to detail, his ass. With the basket in one hand and his other arm around me, we made our way down the steps with a quick stop to our now deserted office to grab coats and my purse. We were careful not to get noticed, as coworker relationships were strictly forbidden. Once on the streets, though, he felt duty-bound to keep me as close as possible. It was a mass of drunk people celebrating. I got many whistles, hey baby, cat calls, and even one bold attempt at groping my breasts. Martin shoved the creep away and hurried his pace with his protective arm, resuming its hold on me. I had never felt so safe in my life. We reached the lobby of my apartment and shoved our way through the throng of residents to get to the elevator. We huddled in the back corner as people piled in with us. I reached around to punch in my floor number. I stood directly in front of Martin, and he wrapped his arms around me from behind and pulled me into him. PDA was not something I was used to. No one had ever dared touch me in public repeatedly. It was one thing to have a drive-by groping on the streets, but someone who wanted me close to him always was strange and foreign. As the door opened up to my floor, I excused my way past the crowd with Martin's hand on the middle of my back. The energy that radiated from his touch tingled outward and seemed to set my entire body into a tingling mess. At my door, I fumbled for my keys in between his sweet kisses. When we finally got into my place and I turned the light on, I had very little time to lock the door behind us before I found myself in his arms again. He kissed me, more hungrily this time. His mouth, his hands on my face, his body pulsating against mine, all seemed to be probing at my depths, discovering my secrets. He needed me. He needed all of me. My heart hurt, as the only thing I knew I could give him willingly was my body. And I did give it to him. I even threw in some of my vulnerability for him. I can safely say that was the only time I had ever made love in my life. Sex was an entirely different thing. That morning, I awoke to the guilt of it all. His arms were still wrapped around me, clinging on for dear life. This man loved me. He loved me, but he was an editor's assistant. He was going nowhere with his life. I knew his book would never be finished. He was not the powerful man for me. No one really was. How did I break his heart? This was the reason I never invited men back to my place, ever. When he awoke, he saw my face looking over at him, and he just knew. He knew I was never going to return his affections. We agreed to cool it down so that he could write his novel and I could move up to editor. We were still friendly with each other, and he seemed to still hold out hope that one day I would come running to him, until he caught me kissing the boss. I felt a twinge of guilt then, but confided in him that it was necessary for me to do whatever it took to become an editor. For us. What a huge lie. Then our dynamic changed when I became his boss. He was excited at first to be working so closely with me, but then became incredibly aware of my power trip. He seemed to harbor some strong feelings up until the end, given the incredible gifts he had picked out for my family. He was the one that got away. New Year's Eve always made my thoughts linger with him for just a moment. I wondered if he was happy now that I was gone. I longed for arms like his once again. I needed touch. I glanced into the full-length mirror in my room. Mother had let me borrow a dress. There were themes for their New Year's Eve parties. This one was a fairy tale theme. Mother handed me this beautiful pink taffeta ball gown and suggested that I go as Sleeping Beauty. Well, Maleficent would be more fitting, but this would do. I hardly recognized myself. I even curled my hair. This would be fun. I had yet to leave the house since I had arrived, save for the trip to the tiny grocery store. We all piled in Alan's van and sped off to the community center. I was excited to meet new faces. Since this was to be my new home, at least for the time being, I thought I would make the most of it. Maybe even make some new friends. Real friends. We pulled up to a fairly new building that took up massive space on a several-acre lot in the middle of nowhere. There seemed to be some kind of walking trail that led to a wooded area behind the building, but it was hard to see as it was already dark. There was a baseball field in front and to the right of the building off in the distance. Alan opened the sliding door of the van and helped me exit the vehicle safely. I was in heels and ruffles. Not a good combination for me. If he had not assisted me, I would have face planted and probably added broken nose to my list of accomplishments for the now ending year. Way to go, Kat. I thanked Alan and watched as he escorted my mother into the building. They were pixies, I think. They had pointy elf ears, little outfits, and wings. Mother wore a short pink dress, and Alan's outfit was brown with skirt-like bottoms and a white t-shirt. First off, I hoped they had blasting heat in the building, as they would be freezing in there if not. And second, they were the cutest couple I had ever seen. I had never seen my mother look more beautiful. A far cry from the stained white apron and fully run pantyhose mother. She was absolutely radiant as a fairy. Sean came around to me expecting to drag me in. He was dressed as a hobbit, of course. He lacked the girth, but he was incredibly endearing. I knew he could feel how apprehensive I was. "Come on, Kat. They are going to love you," Sean said as he was pulling me along. Looking back, I can really see how my existence mainly consisted of me being pulled toward everything. "It just feels weird, different," I muttered as he opened the door. "Let this serve as trying out this new cat in front of new people. A social experiment." He smiled and pushed me gently through the door, following closely behind. I cannot stand to lead when I am in a place I have no knowledge of. What is the layout? Am I going in the right direction? You have been here before, so why am I leading? What I learned from this was that sometimes you need to try out this thing called intuition. Sometimes you just need to relax and get over it. If you get lost, just turn around and start again. Luckily, I did not get lost. I found my way to the main social hall quite easily. The sounds of frivolity spilled out from it. I was led into the warmest energy I had ever been a part of up to that point. The lights were down and the soft blue light glowed throughout the room. There was a white spotlight circling the room. Music was playing over the loudspeakers. A table along the back wall was set up with a punch bowl and spread of colorful food. Laughter was everywhere, surrounding me. Warm energy gave the room an elevated temperature. I was submersed in happiness. It was absolutely contagious. You could not help but smile once you found yourself centered in this room. "Hello, beautiful cat." I immediately recognized the voice of Carl behind me. I spun around and was face to face with Carl and a very tall, raven-haired beauty. "Hello, Carl," I smiled. "Honey, this is Kat, Marissa's daughter." He leaned over to the beautiful woman. "Kat, this is the greatest love of my life, Clara." He beamed proudly. "Hello, Clara. It's nice to meet you," I said as she shook my hand warmly. "Darling, I have been so anxious to meet you. I have heard so many amazing things about you. Welcome to our community. I know we will be seeing a lot of you." They each then hugged me warmly and moved on throughout the crowd. It is so weird how everyone is hearing so many good things about me. "Are you all lying through your teeth?" I joked over at Sean. "Of course. We have to leave out the scary stuff," he laughed. "Thanks," I said sarcastically as I scanned the room. There were so many unfamiliar faces, and then I noticed the most gorgeous one at the punch bowl. "Hey, Sean, there's your one." I directed discreetly toward the punch bowl. He peered over toward the table, then recognized Cecily and shook his head at me. "I am going to regret ever telling you that." He gave me a playful push. "You should ask her to dance," I suggested. "I don't dance," he plainly stated. "Do I have to assist in getting you two together?" I asked in a sarcastically frustrated sigh. He laughed. I grabbed him by the hand and pulled him toward the table, rolling my eyes to the ceiling. "I better get bonus karma points for this," I demanded to the rafters. We nonchalantly made our way through the crowd and to his one. I secretly hoped the punch to be spiked. "Oh, hello, Cecily. It's nice to see you again," I said as I pretended to just notice her as I dipped punch into a pretty faux crystal cup with a ladle. I took a sip. Sadly, no, not spiked. "Hi, Kat," she said shyly. She remembered my name. She must have a really big thing for my brother if she remembered my name after our last encounter. Suddenly, the music took a turn for the slow. A gorgeous ballad echoed throughout the room. I looked expectantly at Sean. He was watching Cecily. I nudged him nonchalantly forward to invade her space. "Come on, let's dance." He held out his hand to her. She stared at his hand for a moment before taking it without looking up at him. They set their cups down and headed to the dance floor. Thoroughly pleased with myself as Miss Matchmaker, I focused on the food spread. Nothing looked too good at the moment, as I was still running on pure nerves of anxiety. I was surrounded by people I did not know. The ones I knew were in the center of the room, locked in loving embraces. Embraces that I longed to be locked in as well. I was turning into a soft girl. "Hi, you must be the beautiful cat everyone has been talking about." I turned to face an energetic red-headed woman with a mass of curls escaping her scalp and a splattering of gorgeous freckles dancing about her nose. "Yes, I must be," I chuckled. She laughed the most magical laugh and hugged me. "I'm Izzy. I have been dying to meet you," she said when she let me go. "Nice to meet you, Izzy." I had no idea how else to initiate conversations. New me was still somewhat closed off. "I work down at the library. You should come see me sometime. We have a great library for such a small town." Luckily, she was a talker, an animated one. "I also teach yoga with Alan and your mom. I teach classes here at the center, and I do a ton of stuff online. We should do lunch. Have you been to any of our local restaurants yet?" I am not sure if she ever took a single breath during her sentences until after doing lunch was mentioned. "Nope, I would like that," I said, getting a contact buzz from her infectious energy. She squealed and hugged me again. When I said I needed touch, it might as well be from this hyperactive, perky girl who quite resembled the Little Mermaid. Which, when she let me go long enough for me to take her all in, that was actually what she was dressed as. When the spotlight did a sweep of our side of the room, I looked down and noticed a tail-fin skirt. "I heard you would be staying here. Are you staying indefinitely?" she asked with wide eyes, almost pleading with me. "I think so." I barely got that out before she squealed again and pulled me into yet another hug. This girl radiated love and acceptance. She made my heart skip several beats as I was consumed by her light. It was not a romantic love, but it was something similar to how I felt with my family. It was like she was meant to be here to love me at a soul level. It was also like she knew we were meant to be a part of each other's lives. Time seemed to freeze in Izzy's embrace as I felt the world slow down. Over Izzy's shoulder, I saw my mother and Alan locked in a different kind of loving embrace, a fierce, romantic love that set the room on fire. I turned my gaze to Sean and Cecily. There was a love there that was still being explored, still unknown territory, but just as strong as Mother and Alan's. And then there was this love that passed between Izzy and I. This love was just as strong, but it was placed in a different category. As I pulled back from her hug, I immediately had the name of what she was as soon as I looked into her eyes. She was a part of my soul family. I had read about soul families in the book Why Are We Here on the airplane. This was Izzy, my soul sister. Home had just expanded for me.